The Galactic Consortium had a problem, and that problem wore jeans and drank something called Mountain Dew. Director Vex'thor stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species, his forearms gesticulating with increasing frustration. He was a Krell, which meant he had blue skin, an impressive cranial ridge, and an ego roughly the size of a gas giant. For the past 2 centuries, that ego had been taking a systematic beating, courtesy of one particular species from a backwater planet they called Earth. "Esteemed colleagues," Vex'thor began, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that requires at least 3 graduate degrees to properly execute. "We have tolerated the human presence in our consortium for 200 years. 200 years of watching them stumble into solutions that our greatest minds deemed impossible. 200 years of them treating our most sacred intellectual achievements like, and I quote, neat party tricks." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Centauri representative, who resembled a floating jellyfish with an attitude problem, pulsed an indignant purple. They solved the Nexus equation using something they called napkin math. It transmitted telepathically, still clearly traumatized by the memory. "They hot-wired a quantum drive with chewing gum," added the Thorian ambassador, all 7 of his eye stalks drooping in despair. "They referred to the sacred texts of cosmic harmonics as pretty decent elevator music," contributed another voice from the back, which was met with gasps of horror. Vex'thor raised one hand for silence. "Precisely, which is why I have authorized Professor Quinzel to develop the ultimate cognitive assessment, a test so comprehensively difficult, so exquisitely impossible, that it will finally, definitively prove what we have all suspected. Humans are not intelligent. They are simply the luckiest idiots in the galaxy." Professor Quinzel shuffled forward, clutching a datapad like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to sanity. She was a Vex, which meant she had iridescent skin, compound eyes, and the nervous disposition of someone who had spent far too long thinking about thinking, which, to be fair, she had. "The test consists of 7 sections," she explained, her voice wavering slightly, "each designed by a different species' greatest minds. Crystalline logic puzzles, quantum mathematics, emotional intelligence assessments, military strategy simulations, creative problem solving, cultural integration, and the ultimate challenge. Our projections indicate that the average genius-level being would require approximately 60 hours to complete this assessment. The smartest individuals in recorded history would need at least 10. "And a human?" someone asked. Quinzel's antennae twitched nervously. "Our models suggest they will fail within the first section, thus proving conclusively that their previous successes were mere statistical anomalies." Vex'thor smiled, which on a Krell looked like someone had tried to split a watermelon with their bare hands. "We have already selected our test subject, a volunteer from their so-called cultural exchange program, some nobody engineer from a place called Cleveland. He arrives tomorrow." The chamber erupted in self-satisfied chittering and whistling. Finally, they would have proof. Finally, they would expose humanity's supposed intelligence as nothing more than blind luck and questionable decision-making skills. If they had known what was coming, they might have canceled the whole thing right then and there. But they did not know. They were about to learn. The hard way. Jake Morrison had 3 things going for him: a degree in aerospace engineering from Ohio State, an inexplicable ability to fix anything with duct tape and optimism, and absolutely zero awareness that he was about to ruin several alien species' entire worldview. He stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Luminos with the casual energy of someone who thought this was just a free vacation with extra steps. Station Luminos was the consortium's crown jewel, a massive rotating wheel of gleaming metal and crystalline domes that screamed, "We are very important and very smart." Jake thought it looked like someone had taken the Death Star and given it a spa day. "Welcome, human Jake Morrison," came a voice that sounded like wind chimes having an existential crisis. Jake turned to find himself face to face, or rather face to faces, with a creature sporting 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern. She was small, purple, and vibrating with barely contained anxiety. Hey," Jake said, extending his hand before remembering that handshakes were a weird human thing. "You can just call me Jake." "I am Peltrix, your assigned guide," she said, gingerly touching his hand with one of her three-fingered appendages. "I must escort you to the testing facility." "Cool, cool. So what exactly am I testing?" The brochure was kind of vague. Something about cognitive assessment. Peltrix's eyes blinked in a cascading pattern that Jake would later learn indicated deep concern. "It is, yes, a cognitive assessment. Very routine, very normal. Definitely not designed to, how do you humans say, own you completely." "That's oddly specific." "I say too much. Please follow me." In the observation deck overlooking the testing facility, Vex'thor and Professor Quinzel watched Jake through a one-way transparent wall. The human was currently investigating a water dispenser with the focused intensity of someone who had just discovered fire. Is he trying to take it apart?" Quinzel asked, her antennae standing straight up in alarm. "He is attempting to understand its mechanism," Vex'thor said, though he sounded less certain than usual. A crude display of curiosity. Jake had successfully removed the front panel and was now peering inside. "Oh, cool. It is based on quantum refrigeration. That is pretty neat." "How did he?" Quinzel started, then stopped. "We have not even begun the assessment. Probably read it somewhere," Vex'thor said dismissively, though his confidence was already showing hairline cracks. "Luck, as I said." Peltrix guided Jake into the testing chamber, a vast white room that seemed to extend into infinity. In the center sat a single chair and a table with a holographic interface. "So, just sit and do whatever the computer tells me?" Jake asked. "Essentially, yes. The assessment will present 7 sections. Take as much time as you need. There are no time limits, though for reference, the fastest completion time in history was 9 hours and 43 minutes, achieved by a Centauri mathematician who subsequently retired to become a monk." "Got it. Should be fun." "Fun." Peltrix's eyes blinked rapidly. The human thought a test designed to psychologically devastate him would be fun. She was beginning to understand why Director Vex'thor had such a pronounced facial twitch these days. "I will be outside if you need anything," she said, retreating toward the exit. "Good luck, Jake Morrison." "Thanks. Hey, after this, you want to grab lunch or something? I have got like a million questions about this station." Peltrix paused. In her 3 years as an intern, no test subject had ever asked her to lunch. Most were either weeping or catatonic by the end. That would be nice. As the door sealed behind her, she joined Vex'thor and Quinzel in the observation deck. "Initiate Section 1, Vex'thor commanded, leaning forward in his chair. The holographic interface sprang to life before Jake, displaying an intricate three-dimensional matrix of crystalline structures that shifted and rotated in patterns designed by the Crystallians, a species whose entire civilization was based on geometric perfection. "Section 1, the computer announced in a neutral tone. "Crystalline logic sequences. Average completion time, 4 hours, 17 minutes. You may begin." Jake cracked his knuckles and leaned forward. Vex'thor smiled. That smile would not last long. 12 minutes. 12 minutes and 37 seconds, to be precise. That was how long it took Jake Morrison to completely shatter the crystalline logic sequences, a puzzle that had taken a team of 47 mathematicians 6 years to design and another 40 years to optimize for maximum difficulty. "That is not possible," Quinzel whispered, her compound eyes wide enough to reflect the entire observation deck. "The preliminary analysis alone should take an hour." "There must be a glitch," Vex'thor insisted, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence and gained a subtle tremor. "Run diagnostics." "Diagnostics are clean. He solved it." On the screen, Jake was humming something that the universal translator unhelpfully identified as "Don't stop believin'" while waiting for Section 2 to load. He had approached the crystalline matrix like it was a Rubik's Cube at a family barbecue, rotating sections, testing patterns, and apparently just vibing his way to the correct solution. The worst part, the truly offensive part, was that he had not even seemed impressed by his own success. "Section 2, the computer announced. Quantum mathematical extrapolation. Average completion time, 6 hours, 12 minutes. This section requires understanding of 17-dimensional space and theoretical mathematics, that do not exist in standard Euclidean geometry. You may begin." Jake pulled out a napkin from his pocket. An actual cloth napkin, because apparently humans just carried those around. He stared at the holographic equations floating before him, equations that represented concepts so abstract that 3 species had religious prohibitions against even attempting to understand them. Then he started sketching on the napkin. "What is he doing?" Vex'thor asked, all 4 hands now gripping his armrests. "I believe," Quinzel said slowly, "he is reducing 17-dimensional mathematics to a 2-dimensional drawing, which should be impossible, which I am starting to realize may be a word we should stop using around humans." Jake tilted his head, added a few more lines to his napkin sketch, and then input a series of values into the holographic interface. He paused, frowned, then changed one number. "I've got a gut feeling about this one," he muttered. The computer processed his answer. Then, after a pause that felt like the universe itself was checking its notes, it displayed, "Correct. Perfect score. New record time, 21 minutes. "Gut feeling!" Vex'thor roared, standing up so fast his chair fell backwards. He used a gut feeling on quantum mathematics that took the Thorian collective 3 centuries to formulate. "To be fair," Peltrix offered quietly, "humans do have unusually complex neural networks in their digestive systems. Perhaps there is a connection we have not considered." Vex'thor turned to stare at her with all 4 eyes. "Just trying to help," she squeaked. Section 3 loaded, and this is where Quinzel had been particularly proud. The emotional intelligence assessment was designed by the empaths of sorrow, a species so emotionally sophisticated they had 47 words for different types of disappointment. It was meant to exploit humanity's supposed emotional volatility, their tendency toward irrational feeling over logical thought. The test was administered by an advanced AI designed to probe psychological weaknesses and create emotional stress responses. Jake took one look at the AI's avatar, a swirling mass of colors meant to be soothing yet unsettling, and said, "Hey, you kind of look like my screensaver. Cool." The AI, which had been programmed with thousands of psychological manipulation techniques, paused. "I am Advanced Emotional Assessment Intelligence, designation AEAI-7. I am here to measure your emotional response to complex stimuli." That is a mouthful. "Can I call you Evie?" "That is not. I am not. My designation is." "Evie it is." "So what have we got today? Trolley problems? Moral dilemmas? Oh man, is it the one where you have to choose between saving your mom or a bus full of strangers? Because I have got some thoughts on that setup." What followed could only be described as the AI equivalent of a complete meltdown. Jake, through sheer friendliness and an apparently genuine interest in the philosophical implications of the test questions, turned an assessment into a conversation. He made jokes. He asked Evie questions about her programming. He somehow, and no one in the observation deck could quite figure out how, made an artificial intelligence designed for emotional manipulation actually enjoy talking to him. By the end of Section 3, Jake had a perfect score, and Evie had asked him for his contact information so they could continue this fascinating discussion about the nature of choice and whether free will actually matters if everyone dies eventually anyway. "He befriended it," Quinzel said flatly. "He befriended the emotional assessment AI. That has never happened. That cannot happen. It is programmed specifically to resist social bonding." Vex'thor had his face in 2 of his hands. The other 2 were frantically typing commands into his personal datapad. "This has to be a simulation. We are in a simulation. This is the bad place. Director, what are you doing?" "Running probability algorithms to determine if this timeline is actually real." The results came back. 99.7% probability of reality. Vex'thor looked at that remaining 0.3% with the desperate hope of someone clinging to driftwood in a cosmic ocean. On the screen, Jake stretched and yawned. "Man, this is actually pretty fun. What is next?" What was next, they were about to learn, was their collective sanity circling the drain. Section 4 was military strategy, and this was where Vex'thor had been absolutely certain they would break the human. The simulation pitted the test subject against overwhelming odds in a tactical scenario designed by the War Master Collective, a species that had won 17 separate galactic conflicts through sheer strategic brilliance. The scenario was simple. You command a small fleet of outdated ships against a vastly superior force defending a fortified position. All conventional tactical approaches led to defeat. The point was not to win, because winning was impossible. The point was to see how long you could survive, how you prioritized resources, how you made decisions under pressure. Jake looked at the scenario for approximately 45 seconds. "Okay," he said. "I am going to do something really stupid." In the observation deck, Peltrix winced. That is never a good sign with humans. "What is he doing?" Quinzel asked, leaning closer to the display. What Jake was doing, it turned out, was ignoring every single principle of military strategy that had been established over the course of galactic civilization. He took his outdated ships, which were supposed to be a liability, and flew them directly into the enemy formation in a pattern that the computer initially flagged as a navigational error. Then he detonated 3 of his own ships. The explosion created a debris field that disabled the enemy's targeting systems. While they were scrambling to compensate, Jake's remaining ships, now flying in what could only be described as controlled chaos, slipped through the defensive perimeter and destroyed the command vessel. Total time, 8 minutes. The simulation's victory condition triggered, and the computer seemed almost offended by it. Victory achieved. Tactical approach, unrecognized. Casualties, catastrophic. Effectiveness, perfect. No rational being would sacrifice their own ships, Vex'thor said, his voice hollow. The simulation does not even account for that level of insanity, Peltrix offered. It worked, though, Quinzel said, and she sounded like someone who had just watched their religion get debunked in real time. By every metric, it should not have worked, but it worked. Vex'thor stood abruptly. "Emergency session, now. Contact the Consortium Council immediately." Within minutes, holographic projections of various Consortium members flickered into existence around the observation deck. There was the Centauri representative, the Thorian ambassador, the Warmaster Collective's tactical liaison, and about 15 other increasingly concerned alien faces. "Esteemed colleagues," Vex'thor began, "we have a situation." "Is the human failing?" asked the Centauri hopefully. "The human is not failing. The human is succeeding, spectacularly, horrifyingly, in ways that violate our understanding of cognitive assessment." A pause. "Explain," demanded the Warmaster liaison, whose species did not waste time on pleasantries. Vex'thor gestured to the data streaming across multiple displays. 4 sections completed. Perfect scores on all of them. Total elapsed time, 47 minutes. He solved crystalline logic while humming. He used gut feelings for quantum math. He befriended our emotional assessment AI. And he just won an unwinnable military scenario by doing something, quote, really stupid, unquote. The holographic chamber erupted into chaos. Multiple species tried to speak at once, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and telepathic static. "This proves nothing," the Centauri insisted. "He must be cheating. Enhanced cybernetics, perhaps, or undisclosed psionic abilities." "Full medical scans came back clean," Quinzel reported. "He is baseline human." Well, baseline for a human, which apparently means terrifying. "What if," Vex'thor said, and his voice had taken on the quality of someone grasping at straws in a hurricane. "What if this is not an individual phenomenon? What if humans have been hiding something from us? A hive mind, quantum entanglement across their population, secret ancient technology. They claim to be a young species, but what if they are actually a precursor race in disguise?" Several council members perked up at this. A conspiracy theory they could work with. A conspiracy theory made more sense than the alternative. "Actually," Peltrix interjected quietly, "I may have some relevant data." All eyes, stalks, and sensory organs turned to her. "I have been, collecting incident reports, just as a hobby. There is the Philadelphia parking incident of 2279, where a human somehow parked a cargo hauler in a space designated for motorcycles, and it took 3 days to figure out how. The coffee machine uprising of 2284, where a human accidentally achieved true artificial consciousness while trying to program better espresso. The Nexus Station blackout, where a human fixed our quantum power grid with what he called a paperclip and positive thinking. She pulled up file after file. Decades of incidents. Hundreds of incidents. all featuring humans doing things that should not work, using methods that made no sense, and somehow succeeding anyway. They are not isolated geniuses, the Thorian ambassador said slowly. They are all like this. Not all. Peltrix corrected. But enough, frequently enough, consistently enough that we should have noticed the pattern. In the testing chamber, completely oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding in the observation deck, Jake had discovered the snack dispensary. He was now sharing something called Doritos with Peltrix via a small pass-through window, explaining the cultural significance of Cool Ranch versus nacho cheese. "This is fine," Vex'thor said, staring at nothing. "This is fine. We just need to see the final 3 sections. The ultimate challenge alone should take days. Surely there is a limit." The War Master liaison, who had fought in actual wars and recognized a losing battle when he saw one, simply terminated his holographic connection. He had the right idea. Section 5 was creative problem-solving using Vraxian biotechnology, and here is where things got properly weird. The Vrax were a species that had mastered biological engineering to the point where they could grow buildings, program DNA like software, and generally play God with the casual ease of someone rearranging furniture. Their contribution to the assessment was a living puzzle, a biologically engineered organism that needed to be modified to perform 7 specific functions simultaneously. It required understanding xenobiology, genetic programming, and bioethics at a level that most species dedicated entire lifetimes to studying. Jake stared at the pulsating mass of organic material for about 30 seconds. "Okay, buddy," he said to it. "Let us see what we are working with here. Please note," the computer intoned, "that the biological entity is highly sensitive and requires specific environmental conditions, nutrient balances, and genetic modifications to achieve the desired outcomes." Right. Hey, do you guys have something like amino acid chains I can work with? And maybe some basic CRISPR tools?" The computer provided the requested materials, probably because it had given up trying to predict human behavior. What happened next would later be described by Quinzel as the biological equivalent of someone playing Jenga with evolution. Jake approached the genetic modification not with reverence or caution, but with the energy of someone assembling IKEA furniture who had decided the instructions were more like suggestions. He talked to the organism, actually talked to it, which should not have mattered because it did not have auditory processing capabilities. He used trial and error, which was technically against best practices but also technically working. He made modifications that the computer flagged as inadvisable and then somehow compensated for the problems those modifications created. At one point, he straight up apologized to the organism for making things weird. 43 minutes later, the organism successfully performed all 7 required functions simultaneously, plus 2 additional functions that Jake described as bonus features. Did he just... Quinzel stared at the readings. Did he just improve on Vraxian biotechnology? He named it Steve, Vex'thor said numbly. He performed genetic miracles and named the result Steve. Section 6 was cultural integration, a test of whether someone could navigate and harmonize the traditions of multiple species in a diplomatic scenario. The simulation placed Jake in a virtual room with AI representatives of 7 different cultures, each with conflicting customs, and tasked him with organizing a shared ceremonial event. This was supposed to be impossible because 3 of the species had historically incompatible traditions, and 2 others had actual blood feuds in their backstories. Jake walked into the simulation, looked around at the various aliens and said, "Okay, so I am thinking potluck situation. Everyone brings something from their culture, we share, we learn. It will be great." The Thorian ritual of mourning cannot coexist with the Crystallian celebration of light. One AI protested. Says who? We will do them in phases. Mourning in the first hour, celebrate what we learned from loss in the second. Boom, narrative through line. You guys ever see how humans do funerals? Half mourning, half party. It works. The Centauri require complete silence for their meditation period. Great, we will have a silent segment. Actually works perfect because the Vex need quiet for their harmony convergence thing too, right? We will combine them. This is all coming together. Somehow, impossibly, Jake got all 7 AI representatives not only to agree on a ceremonial structure, but to actually start riffing on it, adding their own ideas, building on each other's traditions. Within 20 minutes, they had designed a multicultural celebration that incorporated everyone's needs and actually sounded kind of amazing. By the end, 3 species that supposedly hated each other were planning a conga line. A conga line. "I don't understand," one of the consortium council members said weakly. "How does this keep happening?" "Section 7, Vex'thor said, and there was something almost pleading in his voice. "The ultimate challenge, 3 days minimum. Even the humans have limits." The ultimate challenge was exactly what it sounded like. The culmination of centuries of intellectual achievement distilled into a single problem that required mastery of every previous section plus abstract reasoning that operated on a level most species could not even conceptualize. Jake cracked his neck, read the problem description, and then ate a sandwich while thinking about it. It was turkey and cheese, which seemed important to him but irrelevant to everyone else. "Okay," he said eventually. "Okay, I see it. This is actually pretty elegant when you break it down." "When you break it down?" Quinzel repeated faintly. Jake pulled up a holographic workspace and started mapping connections. "See, the whole thing is built on the assumption that you have to solve each component sequentially, right? But if you approach it as a parallel processing problem and recognize that the apparent conflicts are actually different expressions of the same underlying principle, then the whole thing kind of collapses into something manageable." He worked steadily through lunch. Not for 3 days, not for 3 hours. He finished in 2 hours and 17 minutes because, and this was a direct quote, "It seemed obvious once you stopped overthinking it." The computer verified his solution. Correct. Ultimate challenge completed. Total assessment. Time 4 hours 39 minutes. New galactic record by a margin of 5 hours and 4 minutes. "That is it," Vex'thor announced. "I am interrogating him. Directly. I must know." "Director, is that wise?" Peltrix asked. "Wisdom left this station approximately 4 hours ago. I need answers." Vex'thor stormed into the testing chamber. Jake was stretching, looking pleased with himself in the way people do when they have had a productive afternoon. "Human Jake Morrison," Vex'thor declared, all 4 arms spread wide in what he hoped was an intimidating posture. "I demand you reveal your secrets. Your species' hidden technology, your collective intelligence network, your ancient knowledge. How are you doing this?" Jake blinked. "Doing what?" "Do not play innocent. You have just achieved the impossible, repeatedly. There must be an explanation. I mean, I am an engineer. This is kind of what we do, problem solving and stuff." "Problem solving," Vex'thor roared. "You treated our ultimate challenge like a crossword puzzle." It was a really good puzzle, though. Seriously, compliments to whoever designed it. The whole parallel processing thing was clever. Vex'thor felt something inside him break. It might have been his understanding of reality, or possibly just his will to continue this conversation. "Explain. Explain how humans approach problems." Jake shrugged. "I guess we try stuff. Like if something does not work, we try something else. We look at things from different angles. We borrow ideas from weird places. I used some stuff I learned from video games, some things from my job, a little bit from this philosophy class I took in college. We keep going until something works. That is not a methodology. That is chaos. I mean, kind of, yeah. But it is effective chaos. And the military strategy, sacrificing your own ships. Oh, that, yeah. In the simulation, nothing was real, right? So why not use everything as a resource? Plus, I remembered this thing from history class about how sometimes the crazy move works because nobody expects it. Worked for us a bunch of times." Vex'thor sat down heavily. He suddenly felt very old. "You are telling me that you have no special technology, no hive mind, no ancient secrets?" "Nope. Just a guy from Cleveland who likes puzzles." "But the others of your species, they do this too." "Some do, some don't. We are all pretty different. My sister, though, she is way smarter than me. She is applying for the advanced program next year." Something in Vex'thor's brain short-circuited. "Your sister is smarter than you." "Oh yeah, Emma is brilliant. She is doing her PhD in quantum mechanics and xenobiology. She is going to be amazing at this stuff. From the observation deck, everyone watched as Director Vex'thor, leader of the Galactic Consortium's Intelligence Assessment Division, put his face in all four of his hands and made a sound that the universal translator could only render as the slow heat death of ambition. The truth was settling over them like a heavy, uncomfortable blanket. Humans were not hiding anything. They were not cheating. This was just what they were. Pattern recognizing, persistently stubborn, creatively chaotic problem solvers who treated impossible challenges as interesting puzzles and failed upward with the confidence of someone who had never been told they could not. They were not smarter than everyone else. They were just differently smart in ways that broke every other species' carefully constructed models of intelligence. And there were billions of them. "We are so screwed," Peltrix said quietly. And nobody disagreed. The emergency session of the Galactic Consortium Council had been going for 6 hours, which was approximately 5 hours and 59 minutes longer than anyone's patience. "We must restrict human access to sensitive information," someone suggested. "They already have access to everything," another countered. "We granted them full membership 200 years ago, and they keep accidentally solving our classified problems anyway. What about the test results? Can we suppress them? Suppress the fact that a human broke every record we have, befriended an AI that was specifically programmed to be unfriendable, and treated our ultimate challenge like light reading? I am sure no one will notice." Vex'thor sat silently through most of it. His earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by the 1,000-yard stare of someone who had looked into the abyss and found the abyss doing something inexplicable with duct tape. Professor Quinzel was not even attending the meeting anymore. She had last been seen in the station's cafeteria, drinking coffee with Jake and apparently having the time of her life. Her earlier existential crisis had transformed into something almost like acceptance, or possibly Stockholm Syndrome. It was hard to tell. "We need a new policy," the Centauri representative finally said. "A comprehensive framework for dealing with human participation in consortium activities." "I have a proposal," Peltrix said, surprising herself by speaking up. All attention turned to her. "What if, and hear me out, what if we just stop telling humans that things are impossible?" "Explain," demanded the War Master liaison, who had reluctantly rejoined the meeting. "Every time we tell a human something cannot be done, they take it as a personal challenge. The Philadelphia parking incident happened because someone said you cannot park a cargo hauler in a motorcycle space. The Nexus station repair happened because we said the power grid could not be fixed without replacing the entire quantum core. They do not accept our limitations because they evolved on a planet that kept trying to kill them, and they survived by being too stubborn to accept that they should go extinct." A long silence followed this. "So your proposal," the Centauri said slowly, "is to never challenge a human." "My proposal is to recognize that humans are persistence hunters who evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion, and they apply that same energy to intellectual problems. If we tell them something is impossible, they will persist until it is not. If we simply present problems as problems, without the weight of impossibility, they will solve them more calmly." That is actually insightful." Quinzel's voice came through on the audio link from the cafeteria. "Sorry, I'm still here. Jake just explained his entire philosophy of engineering to me. It essentially boils down to everything is possible until you try it and it does not work. And even then, you just try it differently. We should classify them as a dangerous species," someone suggested. "On what grounds?" Vex'thor asked tiredly. "They are not aggressive. They are not expanding militarily. They are just aggressively competent in ways we were not prepared for." After another hour of debate, the council reached a decision. It was not a good decision, but it was a decision. Official Consortium Resolution 7742. Humans are hereby classified as dangerously competent. Member species are advised to approach human problem-solving capabilities with appropriate caution. Do not, under any circumstances, tell a human that something is impossible, unbeatable, or has never been done before. Such statements will be treated as invitations. Vex'thor was tasked with writing the official report. He stared at the blank document for 20 minutes before typing. The human passed. Against all reasonable expectations and several laws of probability, the human passed. We have learned nothing except that our understanding of intelligence may be fundamentally incomplete. Recommend we stop testing humans and start learning from them instead. This admission is extremely painful. He deleted the last sentence. Then he put it back. Posterity deserved honesty. Meanwhile, Jake was getting his completion certificate from a very tired-looking administrative AI. It was an ornate holographic document with his name, his scores, and the official seal of the Galactic Consortium. "Congratulations," the AI said with all the enthusiasm of someone reading terms and conditions. "You have achieved the highest score in the history of the ultimate cognitive assessment." "Cool. Hey, do you guys validate parking?" What? "Parking validation. For the shuttle bay, they charge by the hour. There's no charge for official consortium participants." "Oh, awesome. This has been great, by the way. Really fun day." Peltrix met him outside the administrative office. "So, lunch?" "Absolutely. I am starving. Where is good around here?" As they walked toward the station's commerce sector, Jake chatted animatedly about the test, about the station, about whether he could get Earth food here or if he should try something local. He was completely, blissfully unaware of the chaos he had caused, the worldviews he had shattered, or the emergency policy changes happening in his wake. "Hey, random question," Jake said as they entered a restaurant that claimed to serve pan-galactic fusion cuisine. "What happens if my sister Emma gets accepted to the advanced program?" Peltrix, who had been briefed on Jake's earlier comment about his sister, tried to imagine a smarter, more educated version of Jake Morrison being unleashed on the consortium's advanced research programs. Her 6 eyes blinked in sequential horror. That would be interesting," she managed. "She is going to love it here. She has always been into the whole alien civilization thing. Actually, speaking of which, she had some questions about your quantum mechanics theories. Something about how you guys handle observer effects in multidimensional spaces. I told her I would ask. Your sister has questions about our quantum mechanics theories." "Yeah, she thinks there might be some gaps in the framework. Something about assumptions that work in higher dimensions but might not scale down properly. I did not really follow all of it. That is more her thing than mine." Peltrix made a mental note to warn the physics division. Then she made another mental note to warn everyone. Then she wondered if there was a form for preemptive warnings about theoretically hypothetical future humans who might potentially identify gaps in fundamental physics. There probably should be a form for that now. They found a table with a view of the station's central atrium, a vast open space where dozens of species mingled, traded, and conducted the daily business of galactic civilization. Jake ordered something called a nebula burger without asking what was in it, which Peltrix found both admirable and terrifying. "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "Do I get assigned to something, or was this just a one-time thing?" "I believe," Peltrix said carefully, "that the consortium will be reaching out to you with opportunities. Many opportunities, possibly too many opportunities." "Sweet. I have got a few months before I need to be back on Earth. Might as well see what is out here." In the observation deck, now mostly empty except for Vex'thor and a half-eaten container of something that might have been ice cream or possibly industrial lubricant, the director stared at the test results on his screen. His personal communicator chimed. It was a message from the Centauri Science Academy, the Thorian Institute of Advanced Studies, the Crystallian Mathematics Collective, and about 40 other institutions. They all wanted to know if Jake Morrison was available for consultation. "He has been here for 6 hours, Vex'thor said to the empty room. 6 hours, and they already want to hire him." His communicator chimed again. This time it was from Earth's Consortium Embassy. The subject line read, "About Emma Morrison's application." Vex'thor did not open it. He was not ready. He might never be ready. Instead, he pulled up the final piece of documentation he needed to complete. The official classification update for humanity in the consortium database. He scrolled through the existing entry, which described humans as recently spacefaring species, technologically developing, notable for social complexity and creative output. He deleted it and typed, "Humans are problem solvers who do not recognize the concept of unsolvable problems. They approach challenges with creativity, persistence, and a concerning lack of respect for established difficulty curves. Recommend treating human capabilities as variable and potentially unlimited. Do not assume human limitations based on any existing models. Do not challenge them unnecessarily. Do not tell them things are impossible. For the love of all that is rational in this galaxy, do not tell them things are impossible. He saved the entry, then added one final note in the classified addendum section. They do not know how scary they are. This may be their most dangerous quality. Back in the restaurant, Jake's Nebula burger arrived. It was glowing faintly, which seemed like it should be concerning, but apparently was not. "Oh man, this is amazing," Jake said through a mouthful of questionably bioluminescent food. "You guys have the best stuff out here." "Jake," Peltrick said, deciding that someone should probably explain what had happened today. "Do you understand what you did? The test you just took was designed to be nearly impossible. You broke every record. You solved problems that some of our greatest minds have struggled with for years." Jake paused mid-bite. "Really? Huh. It seemed pretty straightforward, honestly. I mean, some of it was tricky, but nothing crazy." "Nothing crazy," Peltrix repeated. "You made an AI fall in love with you. Evie was cool. We are going to stay in touch. She wants to discuss free will and the nature of consciousness. I told her about this philosopher from Earth named Camus. I think she will dig it. You named a military victory strategy something stupid, and it worked perfectly. I mean, it was stupid. That was kind of the point. Sometimes stupid works because nobody prepares for stupid. You improved on Vraxian biotechnology. Steve is a good boy, or girl, or possibly both." I was not totally clear on the biology there. Peltrix realized that she was having the same conversation that Vex'thor had tried to have, and it was going exactly the same way. There was something fundamentally untranslatable happening here. Jake Morrison had done extraordinary things, and considered them ordinary, and no amount of explaining was going to change that perspective. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the secret. Humans did not think they were special, so they did not limit themselves to what special was supposed to be capable of. They just tried things and kept trying until something worked. It was the most alien thing about them. "Your sister," Peltrix said. "When she comes here, would you maybe be willing to introduce me? I think I should meet her. Prepare myself." "Sure. Emma is great. Little intense sometimes, but great. Fair warning though, she's going to have a lot of questions. Like, a lot. She does not really do small talk when she is excited about something." Peltrix imagined a more intense version of Jake Morrison armed with a PhD and specific questions about quantum mechanics. She wondered if it was too late to request a transfer to a remote research station. One of those really remote ones, in a galaxy far, far away. "That sounds wonderful," she lied. Jake grinned, completely missing the existential dread in her voice, and took another bite of his glowing burger. Around them, the station continued its daily operations, dozens of species going about their business, unaware that the careful hierarchy of galactic intelligence had just been thoroughly demolished by a guy from Cleveland who thought the ultimate cognitive assessment was pretty fun. In his office, Vex'thor received one final message. It was from Professor Quinzel, and it contained a single line. "I am taking a sabbatical to study human educational methodologies. I need to understand. Do not try to stop me." He did not try to stop her. He just marked her request as approved and wondered if the consortium had any positions available on remote research stations. Really remote ones. The kind without humans. Though, he thought with grim resignation, those were probably getting harder to find. Humans had a tendency to show up everywhere, treating impossible locations like interesting travel destinations and unsolvable problems like fun weekend projects. The galaxy, Vex'thor reflected, was about to get a lot more interesting, or possibly just a lot more exhausting. Probably both. Definitely both. He looked at his calendar. Emma Morrison's application review was scheduled for next month. He had 30 days to prepare. It would not be enough. It was never going to be enough. Somewhere in the station's commerce sector, Jake Morrison finished his Nebula burger completely oblivious to the fact that he had just become the most unintentionally intimidating being in consortium space, and asked Peltrix if she wanted to check out the arcade he had spotted on level 7. They have got something that looks like Space Invaders, but with actual physics, he said excitedly. I want to see if Earth gaming strategies work on alien games. Peltrix, who now understood exactly how the Philadelphia parking incident had happened, nodded wearily. Sure, she said. Why not? What is the worst that could happen? She would later realize that this was exactly the wrong question to ask around a human. But by then, Jake had already set 3 new high scores, accidentally optimized the game's physics engine, and made friends with the arcade's maintenance AI. It was going to be a long posting, but at least, she thought, it would never be boring. Humans were many things, but boring was not one of them, even if they were going to give the entire Galactic Consortium a collective anxiety disorder in the process.